Beneath the ancient stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe, ground-penetrating radar has just detected something that should not exist. Using advanced three-dimensional scanning technology and artificial intelligence pattern recognition, researchers have mapped what lies underground at the world's oldest temple complex. What the AI found has left the archaeological community in shocked silence. Beneath the main enclosure, there is a void, a hollow space that does not match any natural geological formation. Computer analysis of sediment layers pulled from the site reveals something even more disturbing. For 70 years, we have called Göbekli Tepe a temple, but temples are places of worship. What the scans are revealing suggests this place was actually something far darker, and the AI has just found exactly what they were hiding beneath those massive stone pillars. In southeastern Turkey, near the city of Şanlıurfa, sits a hilltop that has fundamentally rewritten human history. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating Göbekli Tepe in 1995, he uncovered massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in circular enclosures decorated with intricate carvings of lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures, and snakes. The site dates to 9,600 BCE, 11,600 years ago. It predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the pyramids of Egypt by 7,000 years. It was built before pottery, before the wheel, before metalworking, before agriculture itself. According to every model of human development, this was impossible. Nomadic hunter-gatherers should not have the organizational capacity or technical knowledge to build monumental architecture. Yet here it stands, 20 circular enclosures featuring pillars weighing up to 50 tons each, carved with a precision that challenges modern stonemasons. Schmidt called it the world's first temple, a place where hunter-gatherers met for religious ceremonies, perhaps the birthplace of organized religion itself. That interpretation has dominated archaeological thinking for decades. But the 2025 scanning season revealed something Schmidt never saw, something that changes everything we thought we knew about what happened at this site 12,000 years ago. The breakthrough came when a joint German-Turkish research team deployed the most advanced ground-penetrating radar system ever used at an archaeological site. Combined with AI-powered analysis software trained to detect anomalies in subsurface geology, the scans created a complete three-dimensional map of what lies beneath the visible structures. And what the computer found is terrifying. Göbekli Tepe is massive. The visible excavations cover only about 5 to 10% of the total site. Ground-penetrating radar confirms that at least 20 more circular enclosures remain buried beneath tons of earth, each one potentially containing dozens of massive carved pillars. But that is not what caught the AI's attention. When the neural networks analyzed density variations in the subsurface scans, they flagged something unusual beneath Enclosure D, the largest and most elaborate structure at the site. There is a void, a hollow space approximately 8 meters long, 4 meters wide, and nearly 3 meters deep, positioned directly beneath the central pillars. The geometry is too regular to be natural. The walls are too straight. This is an engineered space, deliberately excavated into the bedrock and then covered over. But here is what made the research team realize something was deeply wrong. The AI's density mapping did not just detect the void, it detected what was inside. Ground-penetrating radar works by sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground and measuring how they bounce back. Different materials return different signatures. Solid rock returns one pattern, empty air returns another. Organic material returns something else entirely, and the AI detected organic signatures inside that void, not empty space. Something is in there. The algorithm compared the return signatures to its database of known materials. The closest matches were preserved organic remains in oxygen-depleted environments. Mummified tissue, desiccated bone, material that has been sealed away from air and moisture for thousands of years, protected from normal decomposition. The implications hit the team like a physical blow. If there are preserved remains in that chamber, if the oxygen-depleted environment prevented normal decay, then whatever was placed in that void 12,000 years ago might still be there, intact, preserved, waiting. Modern forensic teams can extract DNA from preserved tissue. They can reconstruct faces from skulls. They can determine cause of death, diet, disease history, even family relationships. But they need intact remains, not just microscopic fragments scattered through sediment. and the scan suggests that is exactly what is down there. The Turkish Ministry of Culture has classified the exact coordinates of this chamber. Only the core research team knows its precise location. They are concerned about looting, about unauthorized excavation, about the site's security. But there is another concern they do not say out loud. What if whatever is in that chamber challenges our understanding of human history even more than what has already been found? What if the reason they sealed it so carefully was not just preservation, but containment? The AI compared this void signature to thousands of known archaeological features in its database. The closest matches were mass graves and ancient ossuaries, bone repositories where the dead were stored after their flesh had been removed. But here is what makes it nightmarish. When researchers extracted sediment cores from directly above this void and subjected them to microscopic analysis, they found something that should not be there. Bone fragments. Thousands upon thousands of microscopic bone particles, far too small to see with the naked eye, but clearly visible under spectral analysis. The AI algorithms counted and categorized them. Human bone. The concentrations are highest in the layers directly above the void and gradually decrease as you move away from enclosure D. It is exactly the pattern you would expect if human remains were being processed at this location over extended periods. But wait, because it gets worse. Chemical analysis of the sediment reveals organic compounds consistent with decomposed human tissue. Forensic spectroscopy detected trace elements of iron oxide in patterns that match degraded hemoglobin, not from a single event, but from repeated exposure over years, potentially centuries. The concentration level suggests this was not occasional. It was systematic, industrial-scale processing of human bodies. The AI chemical mapping went further. Using mass spectrometry data from dozens of sediment samples, neural networks detected seasonal variations in the organic residue. Higher concentrations appear in layers corresponding to late autumn and early winter, and lower concentrations in spring and summer layers. This was not random. The processing of bodies happened on a schedule. Specific times of year when groups gathered, when bodies were brought to the site, when the rituals intensified. The pattern repeats through multiple stratigraphic layers spanning centuries. Generation after generation, following the same calendar, processing the dead at the same time each year, maintaining traditions we can barely comprehend. The concentration level suggests this was not occasional. It was systematic. It was industrial-scale processing of human bodies. The AI geological analysis indicates the void was designed to collect and hold liquids. The floor slopes toward a central depression. There are channels carved into the bedrock leading away from the space. This was not a burial chamber, it was a drainage system. Think about what this means. We've been calling Göbekli Tepe a temple, a place of peaceful worship and spiritual contemplation. But the subsurface scans combined with forensic analysis of the sediments paint a completely different picture. This was a facility for handling the dead, and not just burying them, processing them, transforming them, carving them. And here's where the physical evidence becomes impossible to dismiss. In 2017, a team of bioarchaeologists published a study in Science Advances that sent shockwaves through the academic world. They had analyzed 691 human bone fragments recovered from Göbekli Tepe. Among these fragments were 3 adult skulls that showed modifications never before documented at any Neolithic site anywhere in the world. The skulls had been intentionally altered after death. Deep grooves were carved into the bone running from the forehead over the top of the skull to the back. These were not shallow scratches, they were deep channels carved with stone tools while the bone was still fresh before it had dried and hardened. On one skull designated Skull 1, there is more. A precisely drilled hole in the left side of the skull, perfectly circular, 6.7 millimeters across at the surface, tapering to 5 millimeters where it penetrates through the bone. The hole was positioned with extraordinary care. When you thread a cord through it, the skull hangs vertically facing forward. This was not random damage, it was engineered for display. Microscopic analysis of the cut marks tells us exactly when this work was done. The bone shows no signs of healing, no signs of being cut while the person was alive. But the elasticity of the bone, the way the stone tools deform the surface, proves the modifications were made shortly after death, while the tissue was still fresh. Forensic anthropologists call this peri-mortem modification, working with fresh bone before decay set in. And there is more evidence of what happened to these bodies. 40 skull fragments, nearly 10% of all the skull pieces found at the site, show cut marks in very specific locations. The temporalis muscle attachment points, the mastoid process where neck muscles connect, the occipital ridge at the base of the skull. These are exactly the places you would cut if you were removing flesh from bone. Defleshing, stripping the meat away to leave clean, white bone behind. 2 cervical vertebrae neck bones show cut marks consistent with decapitation. The heads were removed from the bodies using stone blades, cutting through the soft tissue between vertebrae. The forensic analysis revealed something else that is deeply disturbing. The cut marks on the cervical vertebrae show multiple attempts. Unlike a clean execution where a single powerful blow severs the head, these cuts are tentative, careful, almost surgical. This was not done quickly. It was not done violently. It was done with care and precision, as if the separation of head from body was itself a ritual act requiring specific technique and timing. Experimental archaeology has tried to replicate these cuts using Neolithic-era stone tools. It takes 15 to 20 minutes of sustained careful cutting to fully separate a head from a body this way. That is not butchery, that is ceremony. And there is another detail the forensic team flagged. Some of the skull fragments show evidence of having been cleaned after defleshing. Not just cleaned, but polished. The bone surfaces were abraded with fine sand or another gentle abrasive, smoothing away the rough texture left by vulture beaks and stone tools. Someone spent hours working these skulls after the flesh was gone, transforming them from grisly remains into smooth white objects ready for carving, drilling, and display. The investment of labor in each skull is staggering. This is appearing less and less like a temple and more like something else entirely. A mortuary facility where bodies were systematically processed, flesh removed, bones cleaned, skulls modified and prepared for display. And here is what makes it even more disturbing. 59% of all human bone fragments found at Göbekli Tepe are skull pieces. In a normal burial site, you would expect cranial material to represent about 15% of remains. At Göbekli Tepe, it is nearly 60%. This is positive selection. They were keeping the skulls and discarding most of the rest of the skeleton. The skulls were important. The skulls were the point. And there is one more critical detail that the AI analysis flagged. Not a single complete human burial has ever been found at Göbekli Tepe. No intact skeletons, no grave goods, no evidence of people being laid to rest in the ground the way we find at contemporary Neolithic sites across the region. Only fragments, only pieces, skulls that were carved, drilled, and prepared for something, bodies that were systematically disarticulated and their flesh stripped away. This is not how you treat your honored dead in a temple. This is something else. To understand what, we need to look at the most famous carved pillar at the entire site, Pillar 43, the Vulture Stone. In Enclosure D, right above where the ground-penetrating radar detected that suspicious void, stands a limestone pillar covered in the most complex iconography found anywhere at Göbekli Tepe. At the center of the carving is a large vulture, wings spread, positioned above a sphere that archaeologists now identify as a human head. Below the vulture is a human figure, but it has no head. The figure is ithyphallic, anatomically male with an erect penis, but where the head should be, there is nothing. Just a neck ending abruptly. Surrounding these central figures are scorpions, snakes, and geometric H-shaped symbols that some researchers interpret as gates or doorways. For years, archaeologists debated what this scene meant. Was it mythology, ritual symbolism, abstract art? The AI analysis, combined with ethnographic data on death practices, has revealed something far more literal. This is not abstract symbolism, it is an instruction manual. Vultures play a specific role in certain human death practices. In Tibetan sky burial, in Zoroastrian exposure of the dead, and in evidence from other Neolithic sites like Catalhoyuk, vultures are used to clean flesh from bones. The body is placed in an open area exposed to scavenger birds, and within hours, the vultures do what would take months for natural decomposition to accomplish. At Catalhoyuk, just a few thousand years after Göbekli Tepe, wall paintings show vultures feeding on headless human corpses. The parallel is impossible to ignore. Pillar 43 is showing exactly what happened at this site. The vulture carries the head, representing the soul departing. The headless body below represents the physical remains being processed. This is documentation of excarnation, the ritual exposure of corpses to scavenger birds for defleshing. And the AI spatial analysis revealed something that makes this interpretation even more compelling. Using pattern recognition software, neural networks map the exact position of every carved symbol on every pillar across the site. When they analyzed Pillar 43's location relative to other features, they found something stunning. The pillar is positioned directly above where the subsurface void was detected, and there is more. The AI analyzed the precise angle of the vulture carving on Pillar 43 and discovered it aligns with something specific. When you stand at the pillar and look in the direction the vulture is facing, you are looking directly at the rising point of the constellation Sagittarius as it would have appeared 11,000 years ago. Sagittarius rises at that specific point only during one part of the year, late autumn, the season when bodies decompose slowly in cool air, when vultures are most active before winter migration, when the processing of remains would be most practical and most sacred. The pillar is not just marking the location of the void, it is marking the time, the season when the dead were brought here, when the rituals began, when the vultures gathered. The vulture carving marks the spot. It is a marker stone, a sign saying, beneath this pillar is where the dead were processed. The void beneath is not a natural formation or a later addition. It was built as part of the original structure, designed to collect the fluids and remains from bodies being processed at ground level above. The carvings on Pillar 43 are not decoration. They are labels, instructions, a permanent record of what this place was built for. But here is where things get even more nightmarish. Faunal analysis, the study of animal bones found at the site, reveals something disturbing. The bird remains at Göbekli Tepe are dominated by corvids and vultures, scavenger species, birds that feed on carrion. Why would a ceremonial temple site have an unusually high concentration of scavenger bird remains unless scavengers were being deliberately attracted to the location, unless there was something for them to eat? Human corpses exposed on platforms or on the ground. Flesh stripped by vultures while ritual practitioners watched, collected the bones, and carved the skulls for display. This is what the evidence is pointing toward. Not a peaceful temple of worship, but an industrial-scale facility for processing the dead. The 2025 excavation season has provided even more evidence supporting this interpretation. In February, excavators announced the discovery of domestic structures adjacent to the ceremonial enclosures, small buildings with grinding stones, flint tools, and evidence of daily activities. This is not just a place people visited, it is a place people lived and worked. And what were they working on? The bone evidence tells us they were processing bodies. But whose bodies were these? Were these honored ancestors, enemy dead from raids and conflicts, or sacrificial victims? The evidence cannot tell us that. But it can tell us that this happened repeatedly, systematically, over centuries. Sediment analysis shows layer after layer of microscopic bone fragments extending deep into the stratigraphic sequence. This was not a brief practice. It was a cultural tradition maintained across generations. And Göbekli Tepe was not alone. The AI analysis has now been extended to sister sites across the region. Karahan Tepe, 11 kilometers away, shows remarkably similar features. Circular enclosures with carved pillars. In 2025, excavators there found something extraordinary. A pillar carved with a prominent human face, the first facial features ever found on a T-shaped pillar in the entire region. More disturbing, they found sculptural evidence of death practices matching Göbekli Tepe, a statue depicting a deceased person with a stitched or sealed mouth, the kind of mortuary treatment you would expect if bodies were being displayed or prepared in specific ritual ways. At another site, Saburs, Excavators found a human face carved into the bedrock at the base of a standing pillar, positioned opposite a large carved niche. The spatial relationship mirrors what we see at Göbekli Tepe. Faces of the dead are positioned in relationship to carved spaces, possibly where bodies or skulls were displayed. The AI pattern recognition algorithms analyzed the symbolic systems across all these sites and found both remarkable similarities and variations. The same death-related imagery: vultures, headless figures, carved skulls. But each site has its own style, its own approach, like different chapters of the same death cult operating across southeastern Turkey 11,500 years ago. A regional network of communities, all practicing similar mortuary rituals, all building similar structures, all focused obsessively on transforming death into something sacred, something permanent, something carved into stone. The organizational complexity required for this is staggering. We are not talking about small family groups burying their dead. We are talking about a coordinated regional culture with specialized workers, shared symbolic systems, and the logistical capacity to build and maintain multiple monumental sites simultaneously. But here's what the AI found that is perhaps most disturbing. When the neural networks analyzed the technical quality of the skull modifications across different time periods, they detected a pattern. The earliest skull work shows the highest skill, the deepest, most precise grooves, and the most carefully positioned drill holes. Later examples showed declining precision, shallower cuts, less careful positioning. Knowledge was being lost. The same pattern appears in the stone pillar carving. The earliest enclosures feature the largest pillars, the most sophisticated relief carvings, the highest technical skill. Later construction shows smaller pillars, cruder work, declining ambition. This does not match how we expect cultures to develop. Skills should improve over time as people learn and refine techniques, but at Göbekli Tepe and across the Tas-Tepeler network, we see the opposite: peak skill first, then gradual decline. As if the people building these sites were not inventors developing new capabilities, but inheritors trying to maintain traditions they did not fully understand. Think about what that implies. What if the earliest builders at Göbekli Tepe were not hunter-gatherers figuring out monumentality for the first time? What if they were survivors of something earlier? People who already knew how to work stone, how to process the dead, how to create permanent monuments to preserve their beliefs and practices. People who were already seeing their knowledge slip away, their culture declining, and who built these sites as a desperate attempt to preserve what remained before it was completely lost. The deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe around 8000 BCE takes on new meaning in this context. For decades, archaeologists assumed this was ritual closure, a ceremonial decommissioning of a sacred site. But recent geological analysis suggests something different. The fill was not just dumped randomly, it was placed carefully, almost protectively, in layers designed to preserve the structures beneath. Here is something that makes it even stranger. The burial happened right when agriculture was becoming fully established in the region, right when the hunter-gatherer lifestyle was ending and settled farming villages were beginning. It is as if the last practitioners of these death rituals, seeing that their way of life was ending, made one final effort to protect what they had built. They buried it, not to destroy it, but to hide it, to preserve it for some future time when it might be understood again, because they knew they were the last ones who remembered what it all meant, the last ones who understood the importance of the vultures, the carefully carved skulls, the precise positioning of the pillars marking the places where the dead had been processed. The ground-penetrating radar has now mapped the full extent of what is still buried. 20 circular enclosures, potentially more. The AI estimates at least 200 additional T-shaped pillars remain underground, each one potentially marked with carvings that might tell us more about the practices carried out here. But only 5 to 10% of the site has been excavated. The rest remains entombed, exactly as it was left 12,000 years ago. And beneath Enclosure D, that void detected by the scans remains unexcavated. No one has opened it. No one has looked inside to see what, if anything, remains in that engineered space beneath the pillar marked with vultures and headless men. The research team is proceeding cautiously, developing excavation protocols that will allow them to document whatever they find without destroying evidence. But here is what keeps researchers awake at night. The microscopic bone analysis showed human remains in the sediments. The forensic anthropologists have not been able to definitively identify all the bone fragments. Most are clearly human. The AI-assisted analysis flagged several anomalies in the deepest layers. Bone fragments that are larger than typical human size. Skull pieces with morphological features that do not quite match modern human parameters. The report carefully notes these anomalies without speculating about their origin. But the implications hang in the air, unspoken but understood. If there is something in that void beneath Enclosure D, if there are remains preserved in that engineered space, they might not all be human as we understand it. And that raises questions that archaeology is not equipped to answer. The AI analysis has also detected something else in the subsurface scans that has not been publicly discussed. Secondary voids. Smaller hollow spaces connected to the main chamber beneath Enclosure D by what appeared to be deliberately carved channels in the bedrock. A network of underground spaces, all engineered, all connected, all positioned beneath the most elaborate ceremonial structures at the site. What were they for? Storage, display, processing? The scans can show us they exist, but they cannot tell us what they contained. That will require excavation. And given the sensitivity of the human remains already found, and given the religious and cultural implications of excavating what might be a 12,000-year-old mortuary site, the Turkish authorities are proceeding very slowly. Meanwhile, the AI continues analyzing the data, finding new patterns, new connections, new evidence that Göbekli Tepe was something fundamentally different from what we imagined. The sediment cores show evidence of repeated fire events in the areas around the enclosures. High temperatures, organic material burning, patterns consistent with funeral pyres or cremation. The chemical signatures match what you would expect from burning human tissue. Were some bodies burned while others were processed by vultures? Were there different treatments for different categories of dead? The evidence suggests multiple mortuary practices happening simultaneously. A sophisticated death cult with complex rituals, multiple procedures, specialized practitioners who knew exactly how to transform a corpse into sacred objects to be displayed and venerated. And here is something that makes it even more chilling. The volume of bone fragments detected in the sediments suggests thousands of individuals were processed at this site over its period of active use. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. The AI statistical analysis extrapolated from fragment density in excavated areas to the total site area revealed by ground-penetrating radar. It estimates between 5,000 and 15,000 individual human remains may be represented in the subsurface deposits. Where did they all come from? A regional population of hunter-gatherers would not generate that many dead over the site's active period unless something else was happening. Unless people were being brought here specifically for processing. Unless this was a pilgrimage site where the dead from across a wide region were transported for ritual treatment. A factory for transforming the dead into ancestors, into sacred objects, into permanent monuments carved in bone and stone. The vulture iconography takes on new meaning with this scale in mind. Vultures were the workers, the processors, the sacred birds who stripped flesh and freed souls. The humans carved the skulls and arranged the bones, but the vultures did the heavy work of transformation. The people who built Göbekli Tepe venerated them, carved them into the pillars, and incorporated them into the central mythology of death and rebirth that drove this entire culture. When Klaus Schmidt first found the site, he saw a temple, a place where religion began, where humans first organized themselves around shared beliefs. And maybe he was right about that. But the religion was not about harvest gods or sky fathers, it was about death. The AI analysis has given us the data. The ground-penetrating radar has shown us what is still hidden. Forensic anthropology has documented the skull modifications and defleshing marks. Sediment analysis has revealed the bone fragments and blood residue. Iconographic analysis has decoded Pillar 43 as an instruction manual for sky burial. All the evidence points in the same direction. Göbekli Tepe was not a peaceful temple. It was a facility for processing the dead on an industrial scale. A mortuary complex where thousands of bodies were transformed through systematic ritual practices involving excarnation, skull modification, and permanent display. A factory for death. And the most nightmarish part? We do not know why. We do not know what drove these people to build these massive structures, to invest generations of labor, to develop such sophisticated techniques for handling the dead. We do not know what they believed would happen to the souls carried away by vultures. We do not know why the skulls were so important that they carved them, drilled them, and hung them for display. We do not know who was being processed or where they came from. We do not know what is in that void beneath Enclosure D or what the secondary chambers contain. We have the physical evidence of what happened, but the why remains hidden, buried as deeply as the enclosures themselves. The ground-penetrating radar shows there is so much more still underground. 20 enclosures, 200 pillars, unknown numbers of voids and chambers and spaces engineered into the bedrock for purposes we can only guess. And beneath it all, in the deepest layers, those anomalous bone fragments that do not quite match anything we have seen before. The AI has mapped it all, measured it all, analyzed every data point, but it cannot tell us what it means. It cannot tell us why a culture at the supposed dawn of civilization built a factory for processing the dead, why they carved vultures into stone, or why they hung human skulls from cords threaded through drilled holes. It cannot tell us why they created a system so sophisticated, so organized, so permanent that we are still finding evidence of it 12,000 years later. The 2025 scanning season has revealed more questions than answers, but one thing is clear. Göbekli Tepe is not what we thought it was. It is something darker, something stranger, something that challenges every assumption we had about our ancestors and their relationship with death. The scans show us what is there. The forensic evidence tells us what they did. But the nightmare is not just what we have found. It is what remains underground, in those unexcavated voids beneath the vulture pillars, and the connected chambers that the AI has mapped but no human has seen. What else is down there? What else did they hide? What will we find when we finally excavate that main void beneath Enclosure D, beneath the vulture stone, beneath the spot marked so carefully by those ancient practitioners of death? The AI can scan. Ground-penetrating radar can map. Algorithms can detect patterns invisible to human observation, but they cannot prepare us for what we will see when we open those underground chambers. They cannot tell us if we are ready for the truth about what happened at Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago. They cannot answer the most important question. If this site was built to preserve a message about death, about transformation, about the cycles of life and decay, what happens when we finally understand what they were trying to tell us? What happens when we process their warning the way they processed their dead? Carefully, systematically, transforming incomprehension into knowledge. Will we wish we had left it buried? The stones are still there on that hilltop in Turkey. The pillars are still carved with vultures and headless men. The void beneath Enclosure D still waits, untouched, holding whatever secrets were hidden there when the last practitioners of these death rituals buried their sacred site and walked away. The ground-penetrating radar has shown us it exists. The AI has calculated its dimensions, mapped its connections to secondary chambers, and flagged anomalies in the sediment layers above it. All the technology, all the analysis, all the data point to one conclusion. Something nightmarish happened at Göbekli Tepe. Something systematic and sophisticated and utterly alien to our modern understanding of religious practice. A cult of death that operated on a scale we are only beginning to comprehend. And 90% of it is still underground, still waiting, still preserved exactly as it was when they buried it 12,000 years ago. What else will the scans reveal? What other voids will the AI detect? What other chambers and passages and engineered spaces lie beneath those massive stone pillars? The only way to know is to keep excavating, keep scanning, keep analyzing. But with every new discovery, the picture gets darker. The evidence becomes more disturbing. The practices become more elaborate and more incomprehensible. We thought we had found a temple. We found a factory for the dead, and we are only just beginning to understand what that means.